I got on a plane and flew my ass to Atlanta to participate in something crazy, something called the Spartan Race. Basically, a crazy ass race where you're running 5K, you are running through, you are pulling sandbags. There's one part that I can't stand. I'm going through like a deep pit of mud. I think I would do it again. But it's the mud.
Really? Because when you came home, you're like, I'm never doing that ish again.
I'm never doing that shit again. So look, let's jump into this question, okay? We got a question from frequent listener, frequent writer in Jamar, and he says, going to send an Instagram link to a reaction about anti-science / anti-modern medicine patients that visit the hospital anyway just to refuse treatment. I wonder how often you are all dealing with this today versus before COVID or even 10 years ago. Apologies if I missed this discussion on a previous episode. From Jamar. So he sent us this Instagram link. Alfred, if you can share that part.
So why'd you go to the hospital then? See, this is the thing I don't understand, because a lot of people have this very anti-science, anti-modern medicine stance, and that's fine. If you want to go and treat your children with eye of newt, if you want to ascribe to an anti-vaccination stance, if you want to eschew all the values of modern medicine, that's fine. You accept the risk for you and your children.
You said eye of newt?
But then when your children get sick, and you got to go to the hospital, and you come to the hospital, and we adhere to the standard of care based on what we've diagnosed your child with, and you decline the treatment, and then you make a real, almost to paint the picture that we are egregiously giving you some type of crazy medication and forcing you to come into the hospital in the first place. That's the part that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know if you want validation from others in your ilk, but no. You're taking up the emergency room bed for somebody who actually needs it, and is there to actually receive the help that we provide. So, I'll never understand, but as my parents always used to say, wisdom has chased some of you, but you have been consistently faster.
Yep, there it is. There it is. So basically, the question is...
Wait. So you have to describe what's on there, right? Because it doesn't... We haven't said. So essentially, what Jackademic MD, shout out to him for his funny videos.
Big Ghana.
Big Ghana. But essentially what it is he's reacting to is a mother who posted a reel on her daughter being in the hospital, or her son, I can't tell, being in the hospital. And it says, we refuse Tamiflu even with the hospital visit. And so he's reacting to that, essentially asking, why'd you come into the hospital then?
Yeah.
So
basically, she brought her daughter into the hospital. It looks like she got the flu. So she refused treatment. And everybody's like, well, why'd you bring your daughter into the hospital? He's asking, or Jamar saw this and said, hey, what do you think? Do you get this? I'll start. Can I go first?
You, in the back.
It's very, I can't even, because it's very rare that it should stand out more, right? So I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't seen, there was one time several years ago where I had somebody who was burned badly and did not want to go to a facility that focused on burn surgery. Like, didn't want to go to a burn center, wanted us to treat them. And that was very difficult because you're trying to convince somebody that you're going to be getting suboptimal care under my care, right? And the big issue was monetary reasons. But I took care of the person and, that was it. But this had nothing to do with COVID or anything like that. It was pure monetary. But it doesn't happen in my realm at all. Because it doesn't happen in my realm at all.
I feel like you've told me things like, people like don't want to get transferred all the time.
No, it's very rare.
They like refuse surgery for EGS.
No. So most of the time that people refuse surgery, it's because maybe they don't want to go through the process, or it's never because they're suspicious of what we are doing for them, right? Mm-hmm. Or if they are suspicious, they'll just say, hey, can you get me a second opinion? We're like, we'll transfer you to another facility, which that's fine. I have no issues with that whatsoever. But there are times though when people, man, it's very rare.
Really?
Yeah, I can't really think about it. You go. Yeah, I don't know if you see that issue.
I mean, we see that in OB all the time. All the time.
Can you give an example that doesn't identify people? Because people
Yeah. I mean,
watch our podcast and they get all pissed off.
No, I mean, you have patients who come in, for example, especially when you're doing office and, you ask, do you want to do such and such a test? For whatever reasons. I've had patients refuse to do the 50-gram load to check whether or not they have gestational diabetes, for example, right? That's a big one that sometimes people will refuse. You have patients who just refuse tests. They don't want to, they get to like 40 some odd weeks. And they're getting to like 41 weeks, close to 42 weeks. And you're like, okay, you might want to be induced now, and they're like, no, don't induce me. Don't induce me. I've had that. And you're like, okay, but, the risk of a fetal death is higher as you get closer and closer to like 42 weeks, things like that. They'll be like, no. I've had people come to me for prenatal care and be like, well, I really want a home birth. I'm like, well, then why did you come to the doctor? I don't understand why you came to the doctor if you want to do everything at home. Like, I'm not quite understanding. I guess my question is exactly what Jacademic asked is, why are you here? I'm not mad that you want to do things a different way. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. But what is very curious is, why are you here fighting with me when you don't have to? you don't have to be here. It's not mandatory for you to come to the hospital.
Do you think that being in the hospital gives them the cover?
Yes.
To kind of get away with things that they could say, hey, like, I tried it my way and I definitely want to do it my way, but just in case it doesn't work, I always got the good guys who are going to save my ass at the end. Do you think there's some of that?
I think there's a couple of things. One,
basically what I mean by that is they're willing to, quote unquote, kind of experiment on themselves. And when it doesn't work out, then they're willing
then they're
willing to go to standard care. Like,
and so I think it's two things.
Traditional care.
I think it's two things. One is that essentially, if everything that I say is wrong, or if something that I did goes wrong, then these people can come in to save me. But if they don't save me, I can always blame it on them, right? If they don't save my child, I can say, you see, I brought her to the hospital and this is what happened, right? So there's always this kind of relinquishing of blame on them, because if you keep the child at home and the child can't breathe and you say, well, I'm not going to the hospital, there's nobody else to blame but you.
Yeah.
That's it. So why bring the child to the hospital if you're like, well, I don't want any of the treatments? It's like, well, then she's just sitting here like she could have just been sitting at home.
Yeah, it's I don't get that at all. I think because of like the nature of what we do, it's life or death. Right? Like in minutes and stuff, that people are just like, either the majority of people I take care of don't even know what's coming next. Like, they just, everything that you have to do is in an emergency setting. Either they're intubated or they're about to die or they're obtunded. They don't know what's going on. Or, they're drunk and they're refusing things because they're drunk. But even then, when they're legally drunk, they can't make decisions for themselves anyway. It's afterwards where we have some people will sign out against medical advice because maybe they want to get home soon, or they, like, I got to take care of X, Y, and Z. Like, we see that a lot in elderly patients where, one person who's taking care of their family member, their spouse or what have you, let's say they're both in like their late 70s or 80s. One person is usually healthier than the other, right? Or perceived to be healthier than the other. That person falls, maybe breaks ribs, but they still have to take care of the other person because that other person is home by themselves. So they're like, I got to go home. I got to get home.
Right.
The other thing that we see also where it's just like, why'd you guys do this, is the DNR, the people who have like advanced directives and maybe they're at a nursing home or a facility. and they come in and you're just like, well, it looks as though like you guys have already made a decision that you don't want any aggressive care. Why come to the hospital? Those are the type of things that we get. But I have not seen, at least within the realm of trauma, of I'm refusing what you're offering because of X, Y, and Z. I haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, because if you're a trauma surgeon, you're listening to the show right now, if you've seen it, write in and let us know.
Yeah, I had actually a pretty extreme case. This is when I was training. I had a woman come in. Her history was she had really big babies in a different country. And so when she told us how many pounds her babies weighed, we were like, she might be diabetic. So she's here with a new pregnancy. She comes pretty late in the pregnancy. Maybe she's in her she's definitely in her third trimester at this point in the pregnancy, but like early third trimester. And so we test her for diabetes, and she rules in right away. And so we're like, okay, well, it looks like you're at least a gestational diabetic, but there's a possibility that either you've had gestational diabetes in the past, or you are just diabetic, and you've delivered these big babies in the past or whatever. She got so insulted. She did not like what we were saying to her. So we, recommended that she start on insulin because her sugars were through the roof. She was not happy at all. Eventually, she left. By the time she came back, maybe about a week or two later, unfortunately, her baby had died.
Oh, man. That's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Unfortunately, her baby had died. But, the question of, well, why, obviously she didn't take the insulin because she kept fighting us the entire time that she was in the hospital. She didn't want to take the insulin, and eventually she left. But the question of, okay, but why did you come to the doctor if you already knew what your plan was going to be, right? Like, I don't understand.
I don't know if we'll ever get an answer to that, but I do think, just to kind of pivot real quick, one thing that I've noticed that, so I first brought it up when we were talking about, I forgot his name, but he has a podcast that's coming out. Remember, he's one of the guys on social media. He does very well on social media. He has a podcast where they're trying to debunk medical myths, medical.
Jutland.
Yeah. And I was like, good. And I was like, this will be great. But I mean, we are at a point where, like, even the knowledge that we talk, what we speak, is being questioned. And when we get to that point, like, there's no coming back. Well, what I've noticed also is, not only is there issues among patients questioning us, there's even issues among our own colleagues, right? Where you have your own colleagues who are questioning vaccines and certain
that
other
we
things.
do have.
And that's the part where I'm like, all right, this is going to get crazy now, right?
Yeah.
Because now if you have a doctor who is fully board certified and so forth, and, like, me already, like, the science is out there that proves, these vaccines, they work and all, like, it's all out there and stuff. But if you have someone who's spewing disinformation, lies, whatever it may be, whichever way you want to look at it, for various priorities or for various agendas, that is very scary. That's really scary, because what it does is it delegitimizes the entire, our healthcare, what we do and stuff. Yeah. So I know folks who are going to listen who lean on that side, they're not going to like what I have to say. But I do think that it's a major problem, because I've seen that like firsthand, of how even within a service, if you have one person on and they believe certain things that are specifically related to, like, anti-vax or anti-establishment type things, you bring that up to a patient, that person goes off service, you come on and you talk about tried and true practices, standards of care, and all these different things. Now all of a sudden they don't trust you, but you're the only surgeon or you're only practitioner on call. Yep. What happens in that situation? That's a problem. Yeah, and I think that's something that, I don't know, there's no answer for that, right? But people are going to feel the way how they feel. But that scares me more than a patient coming in and just refusing to get care, actually.
I mean, I have seen, I think this happens on OB, in terms of when we're doing inductions, for example, different people do inductions different ways, right? And I definitely have seen times when, let's say my colleague might try to induce somebody and, the person doesn't necessarily make progress at the point at which I come on. And then I might come in and I might do something else. And then they'll ask like, well, why did the other doctor do it this way or whatever? And I always try to smooth things over because the reality is for something like that, right? For something like induction specifically, it might just be a matter of preference, right? Where you say, okay, well, the previous doctor did it this way. It's not wrong. It works for other patients. Maybe it just didn't work for you. So I'm going to try this other way to see whether or not this will work for you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so in that way, it's a preference. What you just mentioned is a huge issue in that what colleagues might be saying is literally like the opposite. Like, no, like that doesn't work, right? Like that thing doesn't work. Don't take the vaccine or whatever it is, doesn't work. But my question is, if you're telling patients not to do certain things that we know are standard of care in medicine, what else are you offering them? Because to say, well, no, the vaccines don't work and this, that, and the other, I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. But what are you offering them in terms of helping them to protect themselves against these viruses that might be out there?
Well, I mean, some of the things that they're offering are things that we don't.
Zinc?
The things that we don't offer in the hospital.
Zinc?
Right? Well, no, it's not. Yeah, so I get what you're saying, right? But then
take all the zinc.
But then when you come back in and it's like, all right, well,
Zinc don't cure or protect against measles.
I don't have zinc or anything like that. That's the part that's frustrating because it's like, well, I don't, what you just got offered, I don't offer, right? That person who offered it to you is either gone or you may have heard it from, they're not here. I'm here. And I don't, so that's the part where I'm like, oh man, this is going to be, if we start to get more and more folks who are of that ilk, as Jackademic says, it becomes
Eye of Newt.
It becomes very difficult, to even practice standard of care medicine. It will become, So
yeah, it's going to be very difficult.
That's an interesting question. But Jamario, listen, we appreciate you writing in. We appreciate you, asking for our opinion.
And yes, I don't see this 10 years ago as well.
I don't see it that much. Renee may see it more where you start to have, basically even within that realm, it may not be refusing because they don't, but basically I see sometimes patients start to become very like, almost like they want to treat their care like a la carte, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're like, well, I don't want this, I want that. I don't want that, I want this. And it's like, well, in order to get to B, you got to go to step A first. Right. In order to get to C, you got to go through A plus B to get you to C first. Right. Like there's got to be like a standard that we're following. That part could be really difficult. We do see that in trauma at times too, where people want to skip
a lot of that.
Skip a lot of steps.
I want a delivery here, but I don't want an IV.
Yeah.
I want, and it's like, I get it. I get it. People are skeptical because medicine is not an exact science.
It'd be good to get like a medical legal like advocate. You know how they have advocates for schools for people who have like if you have an issue with your child in school, you can get an advocate for that, or if you can get they have that even for for business purposes, right? Like if you have an issue with a vendor,
right,
and you want to mediate, you can get an advocate for you. Like I would love to have an advocate who can come in and talk and say, hey, listen, like what happens in the situation where patients are asking for certain things and we don't do it that way, right? We skip certain steps. Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? How do you meet? Like, I would love
that would be a very interesting thing. Actually, you know what I think? What I think is that we as physicians, especially when you're dealing with patients who are like, nope, I want the a la carte menu, right? Yeah. Like I don't want all these things, is to basically have something that says, okay, if this should happen, then what, right? Almost like an advanced directive for like any issue that comes along, right? Like if this, like, okay, so you don't want Tamiflu. Correct. I don't want Tamiflu. Okay. If your child should now go into, respiratory distress, what would you like? right? Because we can offer this, this, this. What things on here don't you want us to give your child if your child goes into respiratory distress?
So like a menu.
Essentially a menu,
like
okay, respiratory distress, I have this for you. No, I don't want this. I don't want oxygen. I don't want, I don't want a nebulizer. I don't want a non-rebreather. I don't want to, tell us all the things you don't want so that way we know, okay, if you're going to refuse Tamiflu, what else are you going to refuse so that we're not wasting resources on things that you don't want done to your child or to yourself. I think that's fair.
Shout out to Jackademic MD for offering the stitch. He's a really good. I think he's a urologist. He's a urologist. I think he's about 10 years behind me and stuff, but he's great. He's got really good, funny posts on Instagram. So make sure you guys check him out. Jamar, thank you for writing in.